Hi, I'm Bobby. I'm a registered professional counselor and certified fitness trainer. Are you feeling lost, confused, feeling like you want to run away from it all? Wondering who you are and why does it matter anyway? I've wrestled furiously with these questions during periods of my life, and all of us ask them at some point in our lives. Human beings are born with a desire to find meaning and fulfillment in this life, and we all want to discover our purpose. When we lack direction and meaning, we suffer psychologically. So looking back at my struggles, I now see I was going through a midlife identity crisis. Thankfully, the journey led me to a deeper understanding of who I was, where my life was heading, and who I needed to journey alongside. The peace I now experience is the result of making it through the valleys and rough terrain of my crisis. In this video, I want to share with you some of the following topics which really helped me heal and find meaning. Signs I was having a midlife crisis. What is identity and why does it matter? What makes one susceptible to a midlife crisis? How I overcame my identity crisis? Is there a bright side to a midlife crisis? And 5 ways to overcome a midlife crisis. So some of the signs I was having a midlife crisis. Well, let's start with what is a midlife crisis. A midlife crisis can often be provoked by a significant event or events in a person's life. Psychological trauma, marriage, divorce, the death of a loved one, a life-threatening experience, a new love partner, adult children leaving home, etc. My identity crisis began in my mid-30s. At this time, I was a wife and mom to 2 great teenage kids, successful in my business, and I just moved into my new dream home. From all outward appearances, my life looked really happy. A part of me was happy, but another large part of me was feeling unfulfilled and empty. I had all that I had strived for in my 17-year marriage and felt unsatisfied. What was wrong with me? I wanted to run away and I didn't know why. I wanted to run away, but there was too much to take care of. So occasionally I would opt for a fruity cocktail on my lounge chair and just imagine I was alone on a deserted island without a care in the world. The calming and numbing effect of the alcohol felt wonderful, despite often leading to uncontrollable crying and the release of emotions I didn't understand. Confused, I began to journal my feelings and self-reflect on my needs for the first time in my life. I felt burned out and unappreciated, a modern-day superwoman, wife, mom, and career woman. I tried hard to do it all, but had way too much on my plate. To make matters worse, I tended to overfunction, since my self-worth was wrapped up in what I did for others. I would later understand this to be the same codependent behavior that was modeled to me as a young girl. The first appearance of wrinkles, extra weight gain, and individuating teenagers reminded me of how uncool I was and slapped me in the face with the reality that I was getting older. With my kids almost grown up, I would soon be an empty nester. And what did I have to look forward to when the kids moved out? Since focusing on raising them kept me from acknowledging the lack of intimacy and dysfunction in my marriage. I was beginning to sink. My ship was going down. Despite my cries for help, no one could save me. I would go to the depths in my journey of self-exploration before I would surface again. What is identity and what does it matter? Why was I here? To be beautiful for my husband? To serve dinner and clean for my family? Was there no purpose beyond menial tasks and looking good? I had lost my sense of purpose in life. I was exasperated by overwhelming demands outside my purpose. I needed to find who I was, my reason for being, and find out why on earth I was here. I needed to discover my identity. Identity encompasses the memories, experiences, relationships, and values that create one sense of self and is influenced by our ethnicity, race, and culture. It's important because it influences how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, and how we view the world. If we have a positive view of ourselves, we're more likely to have high self-worth, relate well to others, and have a positive view of the world. On the other hand, If we have a negative view of ourselves, we're more likely to have low self-worth, a negative view of others, and a pessimistic worldview. In my crisis, I began reading and thinking and praying about who I was and why I was here. I'll share with you a number of theories and ideas and revelations that led me to greater awareness about my own identity formation and eventually meaning and a balanced life. What makes someone susceptible to a midlife crisis? Erik Erikson became one of the earliest psychologists to take an explicit interest in identity and psychosocial development. His work aimed to investigate the process of identity formation across a lifespan. He identified specific social and psychological tasks or crises that need to be resolved through each developmental life stage. It's at these turning points that we have the potential to progress or regress in our self-awareness and personality development. By the point of adolescence, development has been dependent on events that happened to us as a child. Adolescents struggle to discover their own sense of self and identity while negotiating and struggling in a complex social world. Those who do not develop a strong identity of who they are and what they stand for and embrace responsibility will be unsuccessful as they face the challenges of this life stage, and as a result may experience emotional upheaval, identity crisis, and role confusion. I was born into a family with generational patterns of alcoholism, infidelity, abuse, codependency, and abandonment. As a result of my childhood experiences of abuse, abandonment, and broken attachments, fear had become a driving force in my life. My fear of vulnerability, not measuring up, being unworthy, rejected, and abandoned had resulted in feelings of deep insecurity, anxiety, distrust, and repressed anger. How I overcame my identity crisis? Well, in this place of brokenness and humility, I prayed to God for help, healing, and more insight into myself, into my relationships and life direction. This is precisely when I stopped sleepwalking through my life and my awakening began. The starting point of uncovering my true, authentic self began simply with stillness and mindfulness. And this was a challenge for me because I'm not one who sits still. As I soon discovered, though, my busyness was actually an unconscious way to avoid that introspection and dealing with my issues. For the first time in my life, I stopped and prioritized space to listen, feel, cry, learn. And I had to learn how to connect my thoughts with my emotions since I was in the habit of repressing them. Motivated to make positive changes for a better life, I cracked open my Bible and I read every self-help book I could get my hands on. I got into the practice of journaling and examining everything I thought was true about myself and my life. My self-concept, my beliefs, values, desires, boundaries, motivations, faith, and goals. Everything was on the table and held under a microscope for examination. I had my first introduction to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, while doing exercises from a book that challenged me to observe and evaluate the truth about my beliefs, assumptions, and thoughts. What I identified was that many of the thoughts I had about myself, others, and the world were unhealthy distortions that were contributing to many, if not most, of my problems. I had low self-worth, and I felt anxious and powerless in my relationships. I sensed a deep emptiness and lack of meaning and purpose in my life. More than anything, I wanted peace, security, and happiness. However, looking at all the external places kept me stuck for most of my adult life. Is there a bright side to a midlife crisis? Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist whose perspective on identity helped me immensely. He maintained that at midlife we need to let go of many of the values and behaviors that guided the first half of our life and recognize that you might not be who you thought you were. This was hard to face since I was a grown woman. How can I change my life now? I had been conditioned since a child to stay a victim of my environment. Somewhere deep within, though, I knew that I had to take responsibility for my part in where I was in life. I had to acknowledge that my failure to take responsibility had resulted in many of my emotional problems. I was impacted by Jung's belief that our spiritual experience was crucial to our overall well-being and held that life has spiritual purpose beyond material goals. He was the first prominent therapist to write extensively about the important intersection between spirituality and mental health, and believed people were looking for more meaning and purpose, something that couldn't be found through a psychological perspective alone. He emphasized the importance of balance and cautioned that modern-day humans rely too heavily on science and logic and would benefit from integrating spirituality and the appreciation of the unconscious realm. He believed that humans should set upon a quest for wholeness, the merging of the conscious and the unconscious of our psyche. This process, which is referred to as individuation. It's a journey to meet the self and at the same time meet the divine. And this journey is exactly what I missed after my first marriage. I ran to self-help books, psychology textbooks, and passionately implemented what I had read. I was determined to change my life and do it through sheer will and psychological understanding. However, I was soon to find out that head knowledge alone could never transform me. I needed the divine. I implemented everything I learned in my 5 Steps to a Strong Marriage type book in my second marriage. However, this knowledge didn't save my second marriage. It too failed. Hopeless and despair followed as I was faced with what a mess I had made of my life. It took 2 painful divorces to crush me and begin opening my eyes to the fact that I was unconsciously participating in the dysfunction of my first family relationship patterns. In this humble place, I rediscovered my first love. I met God. And from this foundation, I could discover who I was and my purpose for being. Although I learned and grew immensely through all I had read, my earlier prayer for healing and understanding were answered in the solace of my newly discovered faith. My identity couldn't be found through human effort. It was found in releasing my will and recognizing my place as a child of God. We are God's masterpiece. He's created us so that we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. I wouldn't have believed that finding identity and purpose could be found through a midlife crisis, but to my surprise, the confusion and pain was exactly what led me to finding myself and a life of deeper meaning and purpose. And the fruit of discovering my true authentic self is the peace, joy, and security and empowerment I was searching for. I started my journey simply to escape my despair, but I found so much more. Deep purpose and meaning and relationship with God. My identity crisis was a dark and difficult path, but well worth the growth, maturity, and self-awareness I was rewarded with on the other side. The secure base that God provided gave me the strength to dig into my past and understand the patterns that I had followed in my life and how they had led me to hopelessness I experienced. Through His strength, I was empowered to take action and create new patterns in my life which have resulted in peace, joy, and fulfillment. My values and priorities were transformed as I pressed into God's deep love for me. I am not the same woman I once was. To overcome your identity crisis, you need to get to know yourself and do some serious soul searching. If you aren't sure where to start, here are some steps to get you started. 5 ways to overcome an identity crisis. Explore who you are as a person. Questions to ask yourself. What are your core beliefs about yourself, others, and the world? Where did these beliefs come from? What emotions do you feel? What gifts and abilities do you have? What is good about you? What do you want to change about yourself? Then evaluate your life. Questions to ask yourself. Where have you been? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to go with? What do you value? Are you living the life you want to? What are you accomplishing with your life? What kind of legacy do you want to leave when you die? What have been your greatest accomplishments and failures? What have the highs and lows taught you? What do you believe about God? Love yourself and take care of your body. Questions to ask yourself. Are you getting the proper amount of sleep? Are you eating a healthy, balanced diet and getting enough exercise? Are you in a habit of abandoning yourself for the sake of others? Do you need to work on becoming more assertive? How can you strengthen your personal boundaries? Where do you gain your self-esteem and self-worth? In what ways are you practicing self-care? Create balance and prioritize relationships. Here's some questions to ask. How is your marriage doing? How is the relationship with your kids? Are you making time for the important people in your life? Do you have supportive friends to share and journey with? Do you gain your sense of self-worth from taking care of others? Are you giving too much? Where can you carve out some time for solitude and prayer? Let go of the past. Questions to ask yourself. What are your past mistakes and failures? Have you forgiven yourself and others? Those people that have hurt you? Are you punishing yourself? What do you need to let go of? Set some life goals and create new purpose. Here's some questions to ask yourself. What are your goals in life? If you could have any job or volunteer position in the world, what would you do? What do you feel strongly about? What's upsetting you? And what would you change if you could? What would you like to do for others? What are you passionate about? What were your favorite activities when you were a child? Answers to these questions should give you more insight. The key is then to set some goals that will put your feet to your insight. What excites or troubles your heart can be a clue to your meaning and purpose. By choosing to cultivate self-awareness, embrace any pain in your past, and accept responsibility for yourself and your future, you have the power to create a new story. Live into your identity and authenticity and discover meaning and purpose. With increased empathy for others, I felt called into counseling to further fulfill what I sensed was my greater purpose, assisting my clients to achieve health and wholeness in body, mind, and spirit. In my next video, I'm going to share with you how I have been able to overcome my anxiety and the coping strategies I use when it tries to rear its ugly head. I would love to get your feedback. If you found this video to be helpful, please like and share. My goal is to create a safe place to support you in gaining self-awareness and consciousness, both into your problems and into your personal strengths, and encourage you with the idea that life's challenges really are an opportunity for growth, change, and empowerment. I would count it a privilege to walk alongside you as a fellow traveler on this path called life and assist you in achieving mental, physical, and spiritual wellness. So please feel free to reach out. I'm available for in-person, online, and walk and talk sessions. Until then, take care and God bless you.